Hey guys, how's it going? Dragonstar here. Today I'm gonna showcase all the optimizations that I recommend, all the settings that I think you guys should be following when playing the game, and a couple of Windows things that almost everyone has already talked about, but there's a few things I want to correct on that, so maybe I can touch on it. So, starting off with the game, before we even jump into any of the in game settings, what I recommend doing is pressing the Windows button and typing mouse. And in the mouse settings, if you have the option of putting your pointer option and disabling enhanced pointer precision, I would highly recommend disabling this and putting it on 1, 2, 3, 4th position instead of your traditional 6. 6 is what has been told forever, but the way I have researched into it, and some of the other guides I looked into the best precision for getting your mouse speed correct while maintaining all the advantages is by putting your mouse sensitivity on pointer speed on 4 and then going to your mouse options. Like I have Razor Viper V3, so I'm just gonna go over there and put it on 1600. So if you have a DPI sensor on it, I would recommend putting it on 1600. The polling rate can be 2000 and you can switch it to 1000. The reason I do not do it at 2000 is because it runs out of batteries really quickly. So you can play around with having it at 2000 polling rate and putting your DPI at 1600. This comes out to be almost 800 DPI when you're actually controlling your mouse. The traditional method for doing this was always you put it on 6 out of 11 on the pointer speed, and then going into your software and putting it at 800 DPI, which would give you basically the same as this setting that I have done over here, where I put it at 1600 and put it at 4 out of 11. So that's the first one for mouse settings, which allows you to have very accurate mouse stuff. Your mouse almost behaves completely as you want it to do. No sensitivity issues on your mouse acceleration messing up with your drag speed and everything. That's basically what this allows you to have full control over. The next option that you have to go for is just go to your Windows settings and type keyboard, and keyboard properties opens up. If you're using Windows 11, there might be a different way of doing it. I do not have Windows 11, so maybe look at your control panel and try to figure out where you can get this keyboard properties. But once you're over here, on repeat delay, you want it to have it as short as possible and repeat rate as fast as possible. Cursor blink rate doesn't matter. I just have it disabled. You can have it enabled if you really want to, but these are the two important ones. It might not feel like much, but whenever you're queuing villages or units or something, you're constantly pressing a button at the same time and repeating it. These two options will make them very quick. And that ends with all the Windows basic settings that you can go over. There's a couple of softwares or things you can disable in your registry, which you can test around with. There's a couple of videos if you search on mouse optimization guides, and you can check out if you want to mess around with those settings. I tried it, I did not feel any difference, so I don't recommend doing them. But there is an option to go for that. So that's all the settings that you have to touch in the Windows. For the game, you go to the options, starting off with interface. I like having it at sans serif font. It's just super personal preference. There's 3 options of how to do it. Everything disabled makes it looks like this. Smooth serif font makes it like a little bit more rounded, and I think this one is the most readable one. Clamp mouse to window, very useful if you're using multiple monitors. 2 mouse button, makes sense. Unique player colors, I like it having disabled just because I want to have the option of controlling it with using the hotkey for it. I have a hotkey where I just press Alt G, which is usually by default, and you can use that for unique player colors. Colorblind mode, not a thing. Unique bar colors, I go for unique. It is actually important that you put the health bar colors on unique because of the ring around your town center being the same color as your player color. So unique allows you to have the same color as your town center. Having different colors kind of made it a little bit less obvious when I was actually playing the game. So having it on unique definitely helps more. Grid terrain display, you can have it on or always on. There's a few mods that also give you grid. If you prefer using that, you can disable this by putting it on off and putting it at 0. But I like having it at 34, 35. Like it just goes up and down. For me, like anywhere between 35 to 40 is completely fine. And I like having it always on so that I can see the distance between the archers, the scouts, and everything, where I can actually physically count the number of tiles I actually need to do. In-game interface, I have it at 107%. Just having a slightly bigger interface allows me to see my stuff much more clearly. As much visual awareness I can gather from my UI, the better. Tooltip position fixed. Control group icons, I have it on. Save delete, I have it on. I think I remember a lot of pro players being against safe delete because you wanna not have the confirmation box around your stuff, and then you have deleted town centers and castles in important positions, which made me have this thing enabled. Safe delete is a must on, even if you feel like you're the best player in the world. It doesn't save you from making a mistake and losing all your momentum if you lose a castle or a town center. Zoom to cursor makes sense. Whenever you're fighting, I like zooming in and out so that I can look at my units a little bit better. Display future items, have it enabled, allows me to see the future stuff in my barracks, my archery range, my town center. The technologies will be listed for the future, what is available to your civilization. So pretty useful. Global queue items, 2 rows. Some people have it on 1 row, some people have 1 row active only, and some people have it off. I prefer 2 rows. You can play around with it, see what fits for your style, what is more readable to you. In-game notifications, duration, normal. You can have it short, you can have it long. Normal, just because I'm used to it. So whatever works. This is super personal preference stuff. Readability panels, it enables like a black box next to your panels. I don't think I read as much on what is being said. So personal preference, I've never used it, so I just keep it disabled. Extended tooltips, you can have it enabled. Small cursors, you can have it enabled. Tech tree preview, sometimes you hover over it and it blocks your entire thing, so disabling it definitely saves me a bunch of hassle. When I am scrolling around in the map, it is on the top right of the map, and sometimes I hover on it and it opens up, and then I have to go back with my cursor for 1 sec and it like closes, then I move away, avoiding that fucking icon of my civilization, just so that I don't enable it. I had that issue. Tech tree preview, I would just disable it. Extended unit stats, I think everyone should enable it. I do not have it enabled because it feels unnatural to me, because I've been playing the game for such a long time that having some extra stats is more clutter for me, and my brain was not able to process that information quite a while. When I'm actually watching back the game, I use capture age, so having the unit stats over there just to have the readability of the game is more useful on that part. But when I'm playing the game, I want the simplest information as fast as possible. But that's my perspective. If you're someone new to the game, having as much information specifying what each of the unit is good at with extended unit stats enabled will help you to do that. So these would be the interface settings. For graphics, I have it at full screen. I don't recommend playing at windowed and full desktop. Full desktop takes a little bit more resources compared to the windowed stuff. And graphic presets, I have it at custom, because I just like, if you want to copy my stuff, you just put it at low and then put it at custom and then disable basically everything. Having all your textures off allows you to look at the game much more easily. Resolution 1080p, zoom out 100% at 1080p. I know this might not be the best for micro, but for macro, having as much zoom as possible to look at all your base and everything just makes you much more clear about the game. I prefer it this way. Some people have it at 70%, some people have it at 50%, some people have it at conservative 80%. And whenever I've switched back to those, it did not feel quite right and I go back to 100%. VSync, always turn it off. It introduces some input delay. It has some performance benefits, but I think enabling it just makes it much worse. It just has some input delay between your actions, which you want to avoid at all costs. think anything around 130 fps limit, it like really does not matter. You don't want to put it in infinite because sometimes I think the game bugs if you put it in infinite. So anything around 130 is completely fine. Anti-alias stuff, everything disabled. Show advanced options. If you do not have this thing enabled, just click that, you'll have all of this enabled. Particles low, depth of field disabled, enable bloom, everything has been turned off. Gamma intensity 1.0. Some people have it slightly lower, just adjust based on your monitor's brightness. For audio, I have sound at 38%, voice a little bit higher because I like units. I like hearing units die, but that's just me. And for rest of the stuff, you can play around with whatever feels correct. Narrator, I don't really use any of that stuff. Tooltips, narrations, and all of that. Like you just can play around with it if you are interested in hearing AI voices in your head while you're playing the game. Soundtrack playlist, personal preference. Do whatever you feel correct. Mute on focus lost when you're alt tabbing, it helps with that. Game. The other important menu options. Default aggressive unit stance. Have this stuff enabled. Your units will not be on aggressive stance by default if you don't have this enabled. Rollover info. I think it's just mostly like when you are hovering over a unit, it shows a pop-up next to the unit. Useful for beginners when you do not know what each of the units do, but disabling this should be a priority because you don't want to have clutter on your screen. Automatic farm and fish trap rebuilding. Lots of pros have different opinions on having this enabled and disabled. I recommend having it enabled even at my level because by the time it actually starts being less useful, you're better off microing and spending that word rather than banking it. I've had very few scenarios where I regret spending my word. So automatic farm fish has the downside of you overspending the word when you want to invest it somewhere, but that's a luxury problem. If you are having issues to like not being able to spend the word, you're probably already winning in most situations. So subjective, most of the time just useful. So I have it on by default. Object highlights, I have it disabled. Some people like having it on. It just introducing some flashing things on my screen. I'm not the biggest fan of that style, so I have it off. Health bars, default. Some people have it always on. Classic, I just dislike it. Like I just do not recommend classic. Default is completely fine if you can get used to it. If you're beginner and you have played around with it, always on actually might be just better than default because having information on your screen of the health bars of your units and your opponent's units the entire time can be very beneficial. Like you can run away with units that are on like always on very easily compared to someone who's playing on default. I am used to default. I have tried always on a couple of times in the past, and every time I've done it, it's just backfired because it's too much information. So if you're new to the game, always on would be my recommendation. If you're already someone who's been playing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever tried to switch your health bars, so default is what I use. Display resource gauge on harvest. I like having it on. Just lets me multitask if I am like just making sure my berry is not running out, my woodline is not running out when there's manatams or scouts on my stuff. So yeah, just have disable gauge enabled so that you're not running into your opponent's stuff. Game speed normal. You can have it on fast. It doesn't really matter. It's for single player stuff. Building an aura range indicator. Very important. Always show. This is why you want to have your health bar colors on unique. This actually corresponds with building and range aura indicator. So if you have it on a specific color or classic, it will show up on green or that specific color. Like it, you can pick whatever color you want, and that is what these building and range aura indicators will show. So always show and put it on default so that it's just the color you're playing with. Alt G just fixes that and always puts you on blue. Player color on object range indicator. Yeah, exactly. This is what you have to enable. So these three settings, the interface one, the game building aura, and player color on object range indicator, all three of these combine to give you the standard. I'll just load into the game to kind of explain what I'm talking about. So this range with blue is what this looks like, and if I disable it, it is on black. If I have it enabled but I put a legacy, it will go on green. So that's why I just have it on unique, so that I have blue lines, and if I change my color, it goes to the red. I'll put Marco Polo so that I can see my opponent's town center, and he has red lines. So this is how I have that enabled. Some people have asked me when I was streaming, so that's how I do it. These are the settings you have to use in a combination to get that setting. Record campaign games, doesn't matter. All of these stuff. Display capture edge warnings, probably yes. UGC. Yeah, I was using capture edge. I forgot this was the thing over here. Idle pointers, enable it. Small trees, I just use a custom one, so I don't have that. Remaining population alert, always have this on. New waypoint behavior, I'll use the new one. It's just so much better than the old one. You shift click around, and your waypoints with shift clicking your buildings to the other side of the map. It's just better than the standard one. Right click garrison. Some people are used to doing that. I think most other Age of Empires franchise have these options. Age of Empires 3 and Age of Mythology have the right click garrison inside your town center and other buildings. Age of Empires 2, the legacy version, never had this option. So this is something from the new games that they have brought back to the old one. So I just have it disabled. I was never used to it. I started playing the game before all of this was introduced. So I just have it disabled. Easy drag military. When you have villages and military in a big group, you just make a box around it and it only selects the military. I have it disabled because I want to multitask. Sometimes you're fighting with villages and military, and if you have this enabled, it just messes up with you not being able to select the villages. You have to double click the villages, and it's just very bad. Selection modifier hotkeys. It's mostly like Alt, Control, Shift, and all of that stuff. So you can play around with it and add Control 1, Control 2, Alt 1, Alt 2, just to add and subtract control groups from how you use it. There might be a guide for doing this. If I can link it down below, I'll link it. But if I have to give a way on how to get this option to work for you guys, I'll maybe make another video on it. Shift group appending, it's just the same thing. Almost you are allowed to merge multiple control groups in the same one. So using these two are definitely a must, especially if you're using controls and shifts and alts for controlling a lot of your army, and merging and using bunch of other control groups at the same time. I'm using like 4 or 5 right now, so it definitely helps for that. The next one, this doesn't matter. Villager double click, I have it on select only idle villages. I used to have select all villages. Some people have it disabled, but I have it on idle villages only, because sometimes you want to select only the idle villages when you're double clicking and sending them away. Since if you have it enabled by mistake and you double click a lot of your villages to one point, your entire economy goes idle. So you have to be very worried about stuff like that. Scroll speed, I have it at 91%, maybe very high for some players and some people, but I just have that preference. I fine-tuned it like around 85 to 95, anything below around that usually feels comfortable to me when I'm scrolling around on the map. With the DPI settings I showed and the mouse sensitivity and the windows, with this much scroll speed, it works out very nicely for me. Scroll inertia, it's a very bad thing. It is basically going to introduce that acceleration in the game, and we disabled it through the windows, so we want to disable it through the game as well. So scroll inertia should be disabled at all costs. Click drag scrolling button, it should be disabled. When you right click, any of the other things are pretty bad. Like this is mostly for spectating, and for spectating we just use capture edge, so using this is just a bad idea. So I have it at disabled. Going over the next section, we are going to jump into hotkeys. Hotkeys, there are a lot of, but I'm going to go over some of the more common ones and what you actually should be using on a regular basis. There's a lot of hotkeys that you can choose for, and if you're someone who's new, my recommendation is just use the definitive edition hotkey defaults. That actually might be the best, most optimized hotkey for grid formations. We were using and playing the game for a long time, so my hotkeys will not make any sense to most of the players who are old school and who are new school with the definitive edition, my hotkeys are super unique on using a mixture of Forgotten Empires, HD hotkeys, classic hotkeys, and wobbly hotkeys. So it's just a zombie-fied version of all the hotkeys available. It's not as complicated. I still use some grid, but it's super different. The few things that you have to always learn is drop off resources. This is important. Remember, drop off resources, something you definitely need to use. Seek shelter. Instead of using garrison, I actually replaced it. My garrison hotkey used to be G, but I actually replaced it with seek shelter, because when you're using villages to jump inside a town center and you make a selection box, you make a drag box, and then press G and then press your town center, that's an extra click compared to just selecting all the villages and pressing seek shelter. You just do it in two sections rather than 3 sections, which is why this is just superior. This was something I think I learned from Age of Empires 4, because Age of Empires 4 had that option. So seek shelter, definitely just much better. Set gather point on self, also important when you're making a building gather on itself. You just don't have to use you just don't have to right click and make the building select on itself. So what this might actually look like, I'll give an example of what each of these hotkeys might even contribute to. So I'll put ages, not pages, ages, and then if I want to make a militia, first I go to my select all barracks hotkey. For me, it's gonna be F2, so I have that enabled. And then if I want to make a militia, I'll press the hotkey for it. For me, it's A, but I want to make the militia inside my barracks. So for the traditional method, you right click the barracks and you if you're looking somewhere else, you select the hotkey, and then you actually have to go back to the barracks and right click the barracks to have it garrison inside. I do not want to do that. I want to actually make the militia inside my barracks without looking over there. Let's say I make the gather point over there. So the militia will go over there. So if I want to fix that gather point, I'll use the set gather point on self hotkey, which is control plus scroll down for me, and it immediately puts the gather point on the barracks itself. And now I can make the militia and it'll put on the barracks while I'm microing in the front or using my scout around the map. So yeah, it's very useful. This is like one of the more useful hotkeys you can talk about and look to use yourself. Seek shelter, probably I can explain that as well. Like if you want a garrison, you have to select all the villages, use the hotkey for garrison, and then click the town center, and then the villages will go there. You can use the bell, but nobody uses the bell. Instead of doing that, what you would like to do is actually use seek shelter. So I select the villages, press seek shelter, and they immediately garrison. So it takes me one less action, which is kind of why I recommend doing that. Drop off resources, it's just much more convenient. With ages, I'm of course garrisoning resources immediately, but I'll remove it, put the villagers to garrison the sheep, and now they are collecting the food. If I garrison, I have the 5 extra food. Lets you have the food slightly faster compared to them manually doing it when they have 10 food. So these are 3 important ones which I recommend learning. Some of the other ones you can go over based on what you feel comfortable. The big ones, select all archery ranges, barracks, castles, blacksmith. I would recommend learning this and replacing them with the technologies and everything. So you go into the barracks, you learn all the hotkeys for basically the technologies that you're using, and eventually you get into the habit of using the hotkeys. At first, it will feel very awkward to be using hotkeys for everything. You're gonna have to scroll, you have to come back and click the option, and then you will make the unit. Like instead of clicking, you actually want to just use the hotkey instead for everything. The way I think I recommend people fixing it, I saw it in a day 9 video when he was explaining this, where to learn a hotkey, you queue the unit. If you don't understand how to queue the unit, like you click it and then you read what the hotkey is, you disable the production of the militia and then you produce it with the hotkey. Every time you make a mistake of not being able to make the militia using the hotkey, you actually have to stop the production and read what the militia actually is going to be produced with. For me, it's A. Go back with your cursor in the middle of the map or wherever you want to do it and produce the militia with the hotkey rather than going back with your mouse all the way to make the militia. And that way you can learn basically every single hotkey. If that feels more difficult to you, start off with only one thing at a time. The less things you work with, the easier it will be. And that's basically the hotkey stuff. And let's go to the next one. That would be the game command ones and using for all the barracks and stuff. And select all town centers. This is the most important one that I can show you today, and we'll probably end the video with this one. Select all town centers. I have it on J. I have go to town center at H. J and H next to each other. If I press J and press A, I will be able to make a villager, because for me A is the villager. And if I am looking somewhere else, I press H, I jump to my town center. If I do not want to look at my town center but still produce villagers, I'll press J and make a villager. If I want to go to my town center and make a villager, I'll press H and then press A. So that's why using this is definitely much more useful. Using select all hotkeys just allows you to pay attention at different areas of the map while producing villagers. And I think that's it for all the hotkeys and basics that I could teach. Hopefully the settings and the optimizations are useful to you, and I'll see you guys next time.